Welcome to 365 Christian Men, where every day we aim to inspire and encourage with real-life stories about men. September 29th, John Woolman. As a young man living in colonial America, John Woolman was a Christian who worked as a scribe, an employee who copied documents by hand. When his boss told him to write out a bill of sale, of course, John did it. But it was a bill of sale for a slave, a human being. In his journal, John wrote, "But at the executing of the bill of sale, I was so afflicted in my mind that I said before my master that I believed slave keeping to be a practice inconsistent with the Christian religion." John spent the rest of his life traveling, preaching, and persuading people that slavery was evil, unjust, and not pleasing to Christ. John didn't attack slave owners verbally or otherwise, but he emphasized justice. On this date, in 1772, on the way to preach in England, John contracted smallpox and planned his funeral. If you want a clear conscience, start by listening to it. Thomas Woodward's servants hurried to get things ready for the arrival of their guest. Everything had to be perfect because John Woolman, a notable Quaker, would be spending the night and no doubt looking forward to comfortable accommodations. The servants busied themselves with menial chores that would have been common in 1758. They could be found taking a second look at dishes and cutlery to check for spots, or gathering split wood from the woodpile. After all, chilly days in November called for a crackling fire and woolen blankets draped neatly over clean feather beds. It was the time of day when the smell of hot pepper stew steaming with beef tripe and vegetables and warm rolls rising in the oven could have filled any parlor with the pleasing aroma of a fresh-cooked meal. That day, John spoke to a large gathering of Quakers on a topic that made some folks shift uncomfortably in their pews. Not a message the Quakers had expected, especially at a time when slavery was dismissed by many as a necessary evil. Among the listeners, who were dutiful and conscientious in nearly every other respect, there were still some Quakers who owned slaves. But that didn't stop John from speaking about how evil it was to keep human beings as slaves, property for the keeper's profit. Later, around dinner time, Woolman arrived at the home of his gracious host. He saw how the family was being waited on by servants, and he wondered whether these people were unpaid slaves. Using a quiet, non-confrontational manner, he asked his host, Thomas Woodward, about it. Yes, indeed they were slaves. No doubt an awkward pause and a swift change of subject ensued. John ate his meal politely and retired to his room. But he couldn't fall asleep. Restless, he got up and wrote a note to his host, saying that he could not, with a clear conscience, continue to receive their hospitality on account of the slaves they kept. He then quietly arose, dressed, put the note on a table, and left the home without further notice. On his way, he stopped first at the slave quarters to pay servants for the work that they had done for him. The Woodwards awoke in the morning to find their guest was gone. Thomas Woodward was so convicted by John's frank letter and quiet exit, he released his slaves that very day. It appears that what was most important to John was to maintain a clear conscience before God. Conscience was the organ by which God revealed his truth, and John dared not refuse to follow it. But he did more than dutifully obey and do what God wanted him to do. He really loved his fellow man the way Christ did. He understood the meaning of Proverbs 29:7, which says, "The righteous care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern." This verse is why he defended not only slaves, but all mistreated laborers and created beings on earth. A world without Christ has shown itself to be unjust. What action will you take to expose and oppose injustice? If you want a clear conscience, start by listening to it. Thank you for listening to today's story. Every day of the year, our hope is to inspire you with real-life stories of faithful men who have gone before us. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Join us tomorrow for another story at 365christianmen.com.